Hey guys, so welcome back to my channel. My name is Suhail and I make videos about books here on YouTube. If you're new, make sure you hit that subscribe button before you leave. Like this video if you enjoyed it, and let's get right into it. Today we're gonna do my April wrap up. We're gonna be talking about every single book I read this month. This month I read I would say around 16 to 17 books. There's one that I DNF that Goodreads still count and I don't count that, so I think it's 16. So yeah, it was a great reading month. I feel like after the reading slump that I was on last month, this was perfection. This is everything I needed. We have some good books, we have some bad books, so let's get right into it. Okay, so the first book I read that I started in March but I finished in April was Delilah Green Doesn't Care, and this one is about Delilah. She basically is imagine Cinderella, the bad stepmother, the stepsister, and then her the orphan. That's basically how it starts. But she comes back to her hometown to do she's a photographer and she is gonna photograph Astrid's wedding. So Astrid is her stepsister, and basically she ends up developing a relationship with Astrid, why can't I pronounce that? Astrid's best friend Claire. And Claire is a single mom, and her ex-husband or ex-boyfriend, the baby daddy, is very involved in her life, and she has her issues with him. So she's dealing with that. She's dealing with Delilah and Astrid not finding out, and also Astrid is going through stuff with her fiance, so they're trying to solve that as well. So yeah, I love this book. I gave it 4 stars. And I also read the second book, which is, I read this later in the month. It's Astrid Parker Doesn't Fall or Fail. So this book we follow Astrid, and there's also a carpenter, people that work with wood, whatever. Anyways, there's someone who has that job in the book, and they're the love interest. And we also get a little bit of Iris. I think Iris is the third book, which I'm so excited about. I am so glad that she left it for last, because Iris is definitely my favorite character in this whole series. So yeah, I love both of these books. I think I gave both of them 4 stars. I gave Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail 4.5, and then Delilah Doesn't Care, I think I gave 4 stars. Yeah, 4 stars. Then I read Spy Family 5 and 6. It's getting better. I feel we went through a little bit of a slump in the story, and then now they're adding a new love interest, which from what I've seen in the reviews, a lot of people don't like that, but I love that because it's kind of making Lloyd realize that him and Yor, are it, and he has feelings for her, and I was obsessed with it, especially volume 6. They were both 3.5 stars for me, and yeah, I love them. I cannot wait to finish the series because I really want to get to the TV show. I cannot wait to watch the anime. Okay, another book that I read the first one, and then later in the month I read the second one, so I'm going to talk about both of them back to back, is This Woven Kingdom and These Infinite Threads. This is the fantasy series that I've been looking for. This is the fantasy series that I feel it hit just as hard as well, not as Daughter of the Moon Goddess, because I'm not obsessed with it, but it did hit as hard as Akotar or Folk of Air. And yeah, I loved it so much. First of all, we got main characters of color. I think they're both Indians, it's inspired by India and Indian culture, and I love this so much. It's supposed to be enemies to lovers, so basically she is supposed to be a queen, but she was born in the wrong place at the wrong time basically, and she's not technically the queen yet, and he is the prince, the current prince. So obviously his grandpa thinks that she's trying to take over the throne, and she's evil and all these things. But then he has Cameron has met with Alisaie. He has basically developed a relationship, or has gotten to know Alisaie a little bit better, and he did it before he knew that she was supposed to be mean, so he was able to see the good side of her. And basically that's kind of what we go through in the first book. And the second book, she gets stuck with someone else, another guy, and then it becomes a love triangle. And oh my god, the second book was so good. It was so angsty, and if she doesn't end up with the guy that I want her to end up with, I'll be really upset. I'm gonna be really upset. I am so excited about the third book. I don't know if it's gonna be the last book in this series. I have not looked too much into it, but Oh, I was obsessed. I could not get over it. I cannot get over it. And then I read The Kind Worth Saving, which is the second book in the Kind Worth Killing series. I was obsessed with The Kind Worth Killing at the beginning of the year. I read it in January. It is one of my favorite thrillers of all time, and I loved it. So I was super into this second book. I feel like it gave the same energy. It hit just as hard, but I did not rate it 5 stars like I did the first one, because this one focused more on like Kimball and like him and basically like his past and like people that are doing, basically it's like the same thing, like the same vibe, the same type of like killing, planning. So you see basically like the murder happening from like when they're planning it out to like whenever they commit the murder, to the aftermath, and like how that develops more problems, and then there's more murders. So like it's kind of like the same thing as the first book, different people, different murders, of course. So it is good, but I was expecting more from like Lily's storyline, and I feel like she was just like a supportive character in this book. She wasn't a main character. She didn't do much, you know what I mean? So like I feel like I was left missing something, and for that reason I gave it 4 stars instead of 5 stars like the first one, because I just wanted more Lily. I wanted more Lily, and I feel like the cliffhanger that we ended up on the first book was not answered in the second one. Like it was answered in the sense that like we know what might happen, but we don't know what would happen with her for sure. It was 4 stars. I recommend it. I feel like if you are not into the first one, then don't read the second one, because the second one is not better than the first one. But if you do enjoy the first one, definitely read the second one. And we have romantic comedy, and like this one, you guys, okay, I was so excited about this book. I could not wait, and I feel like it was just not it. Like, okay, I liked the story. It kept me entertained. I was able to finish it without getting bored. So it wasn't like a boring book, but I feel like she was just too much sometimes. Like, okay, so it's basically like about like, imagine like an SNL female character, right? And like she is basically not known for being cute or like pretty. She's just funny. She's basically like not used to seeing like beautiful men get with like regular ass women. He normally sees beautiful women get with like regular ass men, basically like Kim Kardashian and Pete Davidson, you know, that type of situation. She doesn't believe that it can happen the other way around, like a good looking guy is gonna go out of his way to date someone normal, you know what I mean? So basically she has this idea stuck in her head the whole fucking book. Also, she talks about shitting, like literally like pooping, way too much. Like in Colty, you know how in Colty, Sal is always telling, like whenever she sees Colty and she's like, oh my god, he's so hot, she like always tells herself that he poops to make her like not attracted to him. Like, remember he poops, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of like the mechanism that she chooses to like not be into him. Kind of the same thing, but like if you couldn't handle it in Colty, you're not gonna be able to handle it here. Like she talks about farting and pooping and all these like disgusting things that like, I get it, they're part of comedy, and if you made one joke about it one time, it's fine, it's funny. But like once you keep talking about the fact that you poop and like you gotta poop and all these things, like why just I couldn't. I think I gave it 3 stars. Yeah, 3 stars. I wrote, it kept me entertained and had me wanting to know what happened next, but it had too much COVID disgusting bodily functions / self-shamey scenes. So yeah, they talked a lot about COVID because this story took place during like the COVID lockdown and all that. So I get it if you mention COVID, but I feel like it was just way too much a part of the story to where like I was like, okay, I get it. There's a virus going on. I want to read something happy. I don't want to be reminded of what happened in 2020. You know what I mean? So I feel like it was a little bit too much. Also, if you lost someone to COVID, there is people that get COVID in the story. So like, that will be like a trigger warning. The amounts of times she mentioned pooping and farting was so off-putting. I get she's supposed to be an SNL cast member and it's comedy, but one poop joke would have been enough. Exactly what I just said. I wish their interactions while doing the show were longer and more angsty. So like, yeah, I feel like during the show, so like the story takes place like they are doing the show together. He's like the guest, whatever, celebrity for the week, and they're doing the show together, and you can see their chemistry, but like not a lot happened. And then they basically like at the end, before he like leaves the show and he's done with it, he basically like acts like he's interested, but like something happens and then like they don't talk for a while, and then whenever they get back to talking, it's like they go right into it. Like I don't know, I feel like I wanted more like moments like during the show. Like I want to believe that they want to talk to each other again after like time has passed, you know what I mean? Like I feel like what happened during the show wasn't enough for me to be like, ooh, I'm still interested in him, you know what I mean? I wanted more angst, more like, oh, I can't wait to talk to him, you know what I mean? And I feel like that is what happened. Like during the show, not a lot happened. Like you can see that they had chemistry more than like any other like couples or like people talking, but I couldn't see them as like soulmates like during the show. It just happened after, and like I don't know. It just wasn't for me. I rated it 3 stars. Okay, then I read These Infinite Threads, I Straight Park It Doesn't Fail. And then I read What Happened to Ruthie Ramirez. This one I was so excited for, you guys. I was dying to read this book, and it was good, but it wasn't what I expected. So like I've said this before, how like whenever I read a story about like especially Puerto Rican people, but like Hispanic people, I feel like I'm gonna relate to it, so I'm already having that expectation, and that is why I feel like sometimes those books do let me down, because my expectations are higher, you know what I mean? Like I'm Puerto Rican, like I want to relate to it, I want to be like yes, you know what I mean? And I did relate to it, but I do feel like, okay, imagine like, I don't know if you guys remember back in the day in MTV, they had like, what's the name of the guy with the clock? Imagine like, okay, a Hispanic family, right? And like they're like teenagers, and they get into teenager like, you know, drama, whatever, and then one day one of them decides to disappear, right? And then years later, your sisters see you on TV, and you're like basically at like MTV's Flavor of Love, like doing all these like vulgar type of scenes, and like beating each other up. Like the show that she's doing is called Catfight, so it is about beating each other up. So like they're always fighting, like physical fighting in the show, and like obviously like they're like shocked, because they're like, you know, like our sister disappeared, we thought she was dead, and now she's doing like this reality show, and she's just like aggressive. The story is like that, and it did delivered what it promised, but I feel like first of all it took way too long. After knowing the ending, I know why it took so long, but like it took way too long for them to get to Ruthie. Like the whole book was them trying to figure out what they're gonna do and how they're gonna fucking go out of their way to rescue their sister and all these things, you know what I mean? So like I wanted to see more of like life after they found Ruthie, but then again, because of the ending, you know, I get it, but like I just feel like it wasn't as good as I expected it to be, and it definitely had potential. I wrote 3.5 stars. Even though I love most of it, sometimes I find myself a little bit bored. Quote, scenes of Jessica at work mainly. So Jessica worked like at a hospital, and we had a lot of scenes of her at work that had nothing to do with the storyline, so I was a little bit bored with that. And also felt like the last chapter was very rushed. I was expecting the last 10% of the book to start around the 70-75% mark. Love the Puerto Rican representation. So I do feel like they did a good job at representing at least like New Yorkers, you know what I mean? I don't think it did a good job at representing Puerto Ricans from the island, but they're like completely different things, so I get it. Yeah, I feel like the last 10%, so like basically like the build up was like the first 90% of the book, and then at the last 10% everything happened, and you're like, that was a little bit rushed, you know what I mean? So yeah, I give it 3.5. I feel like I had a lot of 3.5s this month, so another 3.5. So I got The Bodyguard. In this one, we follow a girl, and she's a bodyguard, and she has to be the bodyguard for like this celebrity. Imagine like Chris Evans, I think that's his name, the Captain America guy. Yeah, Chris Evans. I was gonna say Chris Hemsworth, but that's Thor, right? Anyways, imagine one of those like Marvel guys, okay? Like a really popular like celebrity, like everybody thinks he's like a superhero, okay? So he basically is back home because his mom is dealing with cancer, and he obviously has a stalker, and obviously, I said obviously like if it's obvious, but like you don't listen, yeah, anyways, whatever. Anyways, he has a stalker, she has to be like his bodyguard, and basically they develop a relationship from there. It was cute, it was just not, like I wasn't dying, like oh my god, I love them, you know what I mean? Like I rated it for 3.5 based on like my feelings. I didn't really care about like the actual like how the book was, you know, put together, or like if it was rushed, if it was slow burn. Like I don't even remember if it has like any spicy scenes. So take my opinion about this book with a grain of salt, but it was just okay. It was a good palate cleanser. It was good for the moment. It was just good for when I read it, you know what I mean? It just did the job, okay? It did the job. I got one book and I was ready for the next one, you know what I mean? And yeah, I feel like 3.5 will be like a good rating for it. I would say 3 stars, honestly. I mean, I clearly don't even remember anything about it, so it wasn't that memorable. Like, I remember some parts about it, but I don't really remember the plot that much, like what was like the plot twist or like the third act conflict or anything like that. I cannot remember. So yeah, I think I'm gonna lower it to 3 stars. But if you guys are looking for something quick and like fun, then you guys can try this out, I guess. I don't know, I personally think there's a lot better books out there if you do want like a romance. Okay, then I read one of my favorite books this month, and that is Advocate and the Hollywood Wives. You guys, this book, so it's basically like about this girl who lives in LA, and she is, I think she's Indian, and she basically wants to be a screenwriter, and she was bartending an Oscars after party, and she basically ends up meeting this screenwriter who is like in his 60s and she's like in her 20s, so a pretty big age gap right there. And he takes an interest in her, she takes an interest in him, and like how he can advance or like help her with her career. And basically they end up getting together. And then while she's dating him, she meets other people in his circle of life and circle of friends. And basically like she ends up finding out things about him, and like the whole book, it's kind of like her going through like his ex-wives. That's why it's called The Hollywood Wives. It's kind of like, okay, so the book does say, I think it like in the cover or like on Goodreads, they do say like it is for fans of Taylor Jenkins Reid, and Taylor Jenkins Reid is like one of my favorite authors, if not my favorite author right now. So obviously I had to read it, and it is 100% Taylor Jenkins Reid's like vibe. I loved it so much. The way she goes through like every single wife kind of like gave me a little bit of like Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo vibe, and I loved it so much. And like it gave me like so much like girl power energy, you know what I mean? Like, yes, I love being a woman. Like, oh, I loved it. Like, women supporting other women and having each other's back was just like, oh, such a good book. It's such a good book. I just cannot recommend it enough. I feel like this is very underhyped. Like, nobody talks about it, but this book, it's amazing. It's amazing, and it's definitely top 10 of 2023. I am obsessed. After that one, I decided to finally give a chance to Ariadne, and I was already like on a girl power kick, you know what I mean? Like, yes, I love being a woman. I'm so proud of being a woman. And then I read this masterpiece. Yeah. This book was so good. It's so good. And this one is basically like Ariadne is trying to save, so basically she's like a princess, and like her dad is gonna murder someone or like a group of people, and she sees someone that calls her attention, and he is kind of like sacrificing himself because I think he is like the prince of another area of Greece, whatever. And she basically overnight sends him to go somewhere so that he can escape, and then she escapes with him, and then she leaves her sister behind. So basically we get both perspectives from like Ariadne and her sister, and then her sister ends up like moving on. Like so after Ariadne leaves with him, she basically ends up like disappearing, and everybody thinks she's dead. And then basically like her sister moves on thinking her sister is dead, but then throughout the story she finds out that she's not dead. It's just such a good story about women and sisters and just like sibling relationships and like sacrificing yourself and like just being like not a good leader, because she's not, well, she is just basically like someone who is taking care of her people and like who doesn't care about just like, oh, I'm the queen, whatever. Like she actually genuinely wants to take care of others, and like especially mothers, and like it's just such a good story. If you like feminist, like woman power, motherhood type of stories, like betrayal, all that, Ariadne is it. Ariadne is it. It's just so good. So good. I cannot rave about it enough. I just cannot believe that I waited so long to read this book. But honestly, like now that I think about it, I feel like when it came out, I wasn't that much into like these type of books, which is why I put it off for like so long, and I feel like I wouldn't have appreciated it the way I did. So I loved it. 5 stars, 100%. Okay, we have 5 more. So the next one is Baby Teeth. This one I DNF'd. I could not finish it. I think I got to, I'm gonna see how far I got. Okay, I didn't write how far I got, but I think I got like around maybe like 25% of it, and oh my gosh, I hated it. I hated it. Okay, the story was good. It was very, very entertaining, and I genuinely want to know what happened. I just feel like there was a scene. Okay, if you don't like demon stories, like, this is not for you. I normally like, when I read thrillers and horror, I want the person that's creating things to be real. I don't want it to be a ghost. I don't want it to be a demon. Like, if it's something like that, I'd rather watch it in a movie. I want to read about someone who's actually killing people, or like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that was also the problem with Mexican Gothic. Once I found out what was going on, I was like, oh my gosh, like, who cares? Like, I'm not into this. So anyways, I want it to be like, I want the chase, being able to catch them and put them in jail, or like killing them as well. Like, it's just the chase, you know what I mean? And like, how are you gonna make a ghost pay for what they're doing, you know what I mean? And I feel like this one was kind of like a demon, and I don't know, it was just so freaking weird. Like, it got to the point where like, the scene where I decided to DNF'd, it was like her daughter, right? The one that was acting weird, like the one that was like possessed. And I feel like it got to the point where like in a scene, she basically said that she heard her daughter make like noises, like sex noises, like moaning and stuff like that. And then when she goes, this is a 4-year-old, by the way, so like, just the fact that you made me picture a 4-year-old moaning is already so fucking disgusting and uncomfortable, and I just feel so icky. And then as I kept reading the scene, like when she went in the room, she could see like the bed sheets like up, like if there was someone actually like on top, and like the bed sheet is like, you know what I mean? So basically, like, she was looking at her 4-year-old daughter going at it. Like, the fact that you had to make me freaking picture that in the first place, I just feel so disgusted and icky and just like gross, and like, leave children alone, bro. Just I couldn't finish it. Anyways, I rated it 1 star because I DNF'd. Disgusting. Like, I'm sorry. Like, the fact that she came up with a story and decided that putting a child in a scene where there's like sexual intercourse, like, how did that even cross your mind? How did that even cross your mind? That's a little weird. That's a little bizarre, not gonna lie. Then I have Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. Finally came out. Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I cannot believe like I read it. I cannot believe that I read it. I cannot get over it. It was amazing. I loved it so much. It was not a 5 stars. It was not a 5 stars. But it was a 4.5 maybe. Like, I think I gave it 4.5. No, I gave it 4 stars. So, okay. I love this book. I feel like it hit just as hard as Abby Jimenez books. I feel like everyone is gonna love this book. When I say everyone is gonna love this book, I mean everyone is gonna love this book. Like, unless you don't like romance, obviously. But like, if you like romance, this book is so freaking good. It's, first of all, it's pretending to be in a relationship, so like fake relationship, love that trope, amazing. Also, they work together, they're doctors, so I love that as well. He deals with severe anxiety. Like, when I say severe anxiety, I have never been able to see, like, I feel like I look at people with anxiety different because of this book. I feel like at first, let's say like back in like, I don't know, before 2020, before I was like, you know, woke. You know how people call us woke? Anyways, before I was woke and I was like more conservative, I feel like anxiety was just like, oh, whatever, it's just in your head, you know what I mean? And then I decided to educate myself, and now I understand that anxiety is a real thing, and I feel like I know a lot of people in my life with it, and I should just stop being so judgy, you know what I mean? So I feel like I have like a different appreciation, not appreciation, because obviously I don't appreciate anyone having anxiety, but I feel like I have more empathy and more patience for people with anxiety. Like, I can tell, like, if that's okay, if what Jacob in this book goes through is what real people with anxiety go through, I cannot even imagine. Like, that must suck. Like, that is so frustrating. Like, the fact that you cannot even control it, and like all you do is like you have like this head, like, I mean, this voice in your head like all the time. It's just, I love me a good slow burn, and she did it perfectly because we got a little bit every single chapter, just the way I love my slow burns. I just wish it wasn't as slow as it was. I got to the point where I was like, okay, let's go, let's get it going. Maybe if we would have gotten details of their physical touches while faking it, then I would have been fine. But I feel like we got told they touch, not what they felt when it happened. I feel like the best way to do slow burns is like, give me a little bit every single chapter, so that whenever they finally, you know, kiss or whatever happens, like, I'm already aching for it. You know what I mean? And I feel like they did do things throughout the story that would make me feel like that ache, but they didn't tell me what they felt. You know what I mean? They just said like, oh, I grabbed her hand, but it didn't give me like what he felt when he grabbed her hand, or what she felt when he grabbed her hand. You know what I mean? Like, I want to know what they're feeling. You know, I want to know what they're feeling. I don't want to know that it happened. I want to have that small moment and see how they're feeling, and see how they're like realizing that they have like feelings for each other. And I feel like this one was a little bit too dragged out. Okay, then I read Twisted Games, and this one, okay, so I had finished Abby Jimenez. That one I read in like paper copy, and I wanted to do an audiobook. In the Libby app, you can see like they give you an option called available now, and it has like a little like, you know, lucky leaf, whatever, and that means that like in that section you get books that are like hype, that everybody wants to read, that have like a long wait, but you just happen to get lucky and you're able to get it. So I went in there and they had Twisted Games. This one I started last year, and I got bored. I'm not gonna lie, I got bored like around like the 15% mark, but I needed an audiobook, and I was gonna not declutter, I was gonna clean. I think I was gonna do something that I needed like an audiobook, not like a physical book, and I decided to give it a try. So you guys, I skipped like the first 10%. I went straight to like where I left off, but like, this book was so fucking hot. If you want a spicy romance, this is it. This is it. I have not read, like, I feel like I used to read spicy romance all the time, and then I feel like they all started feeling the same. So I ended up trying out new genres, and then I ended up getting into new genres and stuff like that, and I stopped reading romance. And I feel like it's been so long since I read a book this spicy, that even when I was reading it, I was like, I didn't know what to do with myself. I was like, oh my, what? Like, I didn't know how to act. I didn't know how to act. I was like, what is this? This is a lot. But I loved it. I loved it. I love spicy books. But, oh my God, it was so like rough, and like, I loved it. It was everything I needed in that moment. I was like, especially like after reading Yours Truly, where I was like, you know, like angst, like, oh, I want them to like finally like, you know, get together and like admit their feelings and stuff like that. Like, after going through that and then getting everything rushed at the end, and then I get this book that's like full of sexy scenes. It was everything. It was everything. It was everything. I feel like it was like the perfect timing for a book like this. I loved it. I loved it. If you guys don't know, I mean, this book is pretty hyped about, so I'm pretty sure you guys, most of you know at least. This is about a princess who is living like a normal life in New York. She's like from a different country, and she has a bodyguard, of course, because she's trying to pretend to be normal, and it's a relationship between them. And then she had, I'm not gonna spoil it, but like something happens where like she has to go back home, and like stuff happens, and I'm just like, I love it. I loved this book. It was so good. And I saw that Ana Huang came out with King of Pride, which is the second book in a King of Wrath whatever series. I'm reading that one too, because I loved King of Wrath. I loved it. So good. Oh, I cannot. All right, then I read Local Woman Missing, and this one I gave 3.5. I'm telling you, I read a lot of 3.5s this month. I feel like this book was good. Like, it was entertaining. I was never bored. I always wanted to know what happened next. I never could have figured out who it was at the end. It was definitely surprising, which is why I gave it the, 3.5 stars. It was like a 4 stars, okay? Now, this book is very traumatizing. The way it starts, like the way it describes a kidnapping victim, like not being kidnapped, but like after she's been kidnapped and like kept in this basement for years and years and years, I feel like it was so detailed that it was like a little bit like off-putting. A little bit, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, okay, I get it that they go through all that, but like, I didn't need to know that. And like, some people like those details, which is why, like, I'm telling you, so that if you are interested in those things, then yeah, go for it. But yeah, I was a little bit, especially like having kids. If my kids go through that, I don't know what I would do with myself, honestly. Like, that sounds horrible and like traumatizing. Of course, it's definitely traumatizing, but like, it was too much. It was too much. But I decided to keep going because then the story kind of like went into like another setting. I thought it was like two different books, not gonna lie. I feel like now that I finished the book, I don't see why we needed to get all those details from that first, like the first chapters, you know what I mean? But it's because I finished the book. But like at first I was like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy. She's like, you know, like I felt like it was gonna be a part of the story. It was not. It was completely like unnecessary, but whatever. And then we did get like another, like we obviously are trying to like introduce new characters to make you think it's them who's killing people and all that. We get like this pregnant lady who has like clearly an abusive husband, and her birth scene was so fucking traumatizing. I had a really hard first birth. My second birth was pretty easy, but the first one was like 38 hours and I felt like I was gonna die. I felt like I was gonna die. And I feel like if I felt like I was gonna die, reading that scene, like what the girl went through, knowing that she had it worse than me, definitely triggered me. If I could go back in time, I would have skipped it, basically. So yeah, you guys, the next one is a 3.5 as well. Everything is a 3.5. I feel like 3 stars. Okay, the way I rate, it's like 1, I DNF. 2, I finished it, but I should have DNF'd. 3, I liked it, but I would not recommend. 4, I loved it and I would recommend. 5, I'm obsessed with it, you know what I mean? So that's why sometimes I'm like rating it 3.5, because like even though I didn't love it as much as a 4 stars, I would still recommend it, you know what I mean? So that's like where the 3.5 comes from. The book was like, okay, first of all, I did both audiobook and the physical copy. I feel like if I would have not done the audiobook, I would have DNF'd. But I do feel like the plot twist, first of all, I didn't see coming the plot twist, but whenever, okay, I thought something happened, right? I thought this is what actually happened, right? And then I thought something else happened, and that second thing I thought that happened was so mind-blowing that I was like, this is it, right? This is it. This is what really happened. And then from having that excitement of finding out that that is what really happened, I found out that that is not what happened. Something else happened. And then that's why I was let down, because I was already waiting for this second thing that I thought happened to happen. And then what actually happened wasn't even as exciting as what I thought happened. Yeah, anyways, basically like I got my hopes up like towards the end thinking that something happened, and then when I find out that it's not, I was like, really that's what happened, you know what I mean? Like, anyways, that's why I rated it 3.5, because it was good, it was entertaining, I was able to finish it. So if I'm able to finish a book, you know, that says a lot. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. These were all the books I read this month. If you did, if you have different opinions, make sure you leave them down in the comment section below. Hit that like button down below if you like this video. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure you do so before you leave, and I will see you in my next one.